What's up?
First podcast of the year
2019.
with one of our favorite people in the world. Who is this guy?
That's Mr. Azar.
Mr. Azar.
Yes.
Restaurateur.
Oh, yeah, he's got a restaurant.
He's got a restaurant.
Yeah.
So we're going to throw you under the bus with the very first question. How the heck did you get involved in a restaurant?
Oh, yeah. Good story. I forgot I was involved in a restaurant. That's how rewarding it's been.
Nice.
No, it was, I met a very successful guy here who runs an organization called New Waterloo.
Okay.
And they have a dozen restaurants, hotels. They're here, they're in Nashville. And I was getting networked in the Austin community and met this guy, very interesting guy. That's a story for another day, but he invited me to invest in one of the restaurants they were building. They were building 3 at the time. And I chose the French concept. Yeah.
Nice.
Called Le Politique. It's very good. It's an excellent restaurant.
In downtown Austin, right?
In downtown Austin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when Mega Camp, we'll go eat there.
That's right.
Yep.
Oh, I'll take you.
August.
Yeah. We expect to be able to get the full tour.
I welcome the opportunity to have you as my guest at the Politique.
Yep. And then afterwards, we'll go to the Mean-Eyed Cat.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Hey, so a little bit about your background. I'll cover the nuts and bolts, and then we've got some other questions for you. So, born in El Paso?
Born in El Paso. Since I'm kind of an old guy, I'll try to make it quick, but it's probably all pretty relevant. Born and raised in El Paso. Went to college in Dallas. Worked in the banking industry in Houston. Came back to El Paso and started a contract manufacturing company called Vortec. I was in my mid-20s and I had 2,500 people working for me in Mexico. I had no idea what I was doing. It was a very interesting experience, but I got lucky. Sold that company 1996, and let's see. From there, I worked for Carl Pohlad, a billionaire out of Minneapolis. And I was a bird dog for him for financial service companies, and did that until basically early 2001. And
he did a lot of mergers and acquisitions, right?
He did. Carl, enormously successful guy, again, out of Minneapolis, made his money in financial services, primarily banking specifically. And taught me so much. He's one of those guys that I look to for guidance. He's long deceased now, but I still look to him for a lot of guidance when remembering back the lessons he taught me. He also owns the Minnesota Twins, and that family owns about 50 other big businesses. They're very entrepreneurial, typical entrepreneurial Minnesota family, soft-spoken, kind, humble, and successful beyond belief.
I'm assuming that you learned a ton.
I learned a ton. I was traveling, Chase, at the time. I had very young children. My wife, Paula, was at home most of the time alone. I was on the road most of the time. And I said, man, I got to find something else to do because it's not fair to her. And I was not at home with my young children as much as I wanted to be. So I began looking for a business to buy and operate. And I looked, of course, in El Paso. I looked in cities throughout Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and came upon and I wanted to be in financial services, by the way. And I came upon a family in Tucson who I'm still in business with today. And they introduced me to this concept that a real estate business could be a financial service business. And at that time, Home Services was just getting off the ground. Home Services, of course, owns Long Realty, and they had a public filing, and I read all about it, and I go, wow, you could be in the mortgage business, the title business, the insurance business, and this really is, real estate agents really do control tremendous amount of financial services, point of sale, and so I bought an existing company there in Tucson in 2002, and moved my family over later that year, and sort of the rest is history.
So what? So you came over 2002 to Tucson. When did that process start with getting to know more about Keller Williams?
Well, gee, Aaron, when did you and I meet? That was probably 2004.
2004.
It really wasn't until about 2000 and I'd say 6 or 7. And we were a franchise, of course. We were not Keller Williams. We were Brand X. And I had gotten to know a lot about the ownership and the financial condition and so forth of that entity. And I began to grow increasingly uncomfortable, not with them as human beings, but just simply the viability of that business model going forward. And so at that time, I began to systematically contact every major franchisor in North America. And I met with 11 different franchise organizations in the US and Canada. Literally got on a plane, went to headquarters, met with all the brass. Because when you go out there and you say, look, I got 400 agents in Tucson, Arizona, I'm looking to affiliate with a brand, boy, they roll out the red carpet.
Yeah.
I never flew more first class flights than when I was doing that. And the routine was always the same, Chase. It was always, you show up, you have breakfast with the CEO. He hands you off to the marketing people, who hand you off to the technology people. You sort of go through what they call the dog and pony show. Yeah. And then the day ends back with the CEO, and they say, hey, we want to be in business with you. And they're all very impressive people, very impressive organizations, and all just sort of fell flat. And remember, I was really taking this seriously around 2008. When our franchise agreement expired, and I was really having to take a new affiliation very seriously.
Yeah.
And of course, the impetus at that time was not just I need a new franchisor. The impetus at the time was how are we going to help our agents survive the most catastrophic market shift known in real estate? I mean, we were ground zero in Arizona, and as you guys well know. And I had the good fortune of getting a call by who's now my sponsor in Keller Williams. Joe
and
Gluckman.
Become a mutual friend of mine too.
Yeah, Joe Gluckman.
Mr. Joe Gluckman.
Exactly. And Joe called and said, hey, are you still shopping for a franchisor? And I said, yeah, I am. And he said, well, come out and meet folks at Keller Williams. Keller Williams, all the stuff that I had heard about Keller Williams, right? Just on the street, and all of it wrong, by the way. And he goes, he literally goes, just shut up and come to Austin. And I go, okay. So I said, I've just happened to be going there for a wedding in like a month, and great. And really just had the most amazing experience. The CEO of the company at the time was Mark Willis, and you guys will appreciate this. We essentially spent most of the day going through my behavioral assessment, my thinking assessment, and I'm going, so where's the dog and pony? Like, when am I going to meet the marketing people and the technology people? And I remember Mark going, we'll just get to that way later. What's important now is decide whether or not we want to be in business with you and you want to be in business with us. And so we really have to get to know you as a person. And I was like, wow, this is very different.
You're not just a number.
Yeah. And then he walks me down the hall and he goes, there's somebody I want to introduce you to. He walks me down the hall. We walk into Gary Keller's office, and Gary's office is lined with amplifiers and guitars. And I'm thinking, God, what in the world is going on here? And of course, if you know Gary, he stepped out from behind his desk, and we had some pleasantries, and then he immediately just starts hammering me on business metrics, key performance indicators, and how are you managing your business? And he sized me up fast, man. I mean, he looks at me and he says, "You got a problem." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, how did he know?" He said, "Yeah, you got way too much overhead. The model doesn't work." He just sort of all the litany, all my underbelly, he just was pointing at him, and I was astounded. And that really got my attention. And then I began to pay attention to the fact that Gary really gets it, at a fundamental level. His focus is on the agent. It's careers worth having, businesses worth owning, lives worth living. And of course, my criteria through this whole process was what's best for the agents, not what's best for me, not what's going to look best down at the, when I'm talking to my buddies at the country club. It was what's best for the agents, because I knew that was the one thing that was going to be the long-term winner.
Yeah.
And honestly, nothing even came close.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
How long did that process take once you kind of flew back? You flew back home and kind of, I'm sure your head was in a whirlwind, but then how long did that process take?
Aaron, that was the summer of 2009 that I met with Mark and Gary. And that was late summer 2009, and we launched Keller Williams in March of 2010.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So, quick question on that. So, what was the determining factor, I guess, in that opportunity that was presented? Was there something that just really stood out that you were like, all right, this is it. This is the direction that we're going?
It's funny you asked that question. There was a moment in time, I went to Mega Camp 2009, right? Because my timing was such that I got to see not only Mega Camp, but I got to see Family Reunion. But by the time Family Reunion came around, like February, it was done. The decision was made, but it was not made when I went to Mega Camp. And I saw the level of professionalism of the agents that I interacted with. Very, very different. Remember, I went to every major franchise organization. I went to most of their conferences too, their annual conferences. Most of them you could have, shot a gun through the middle of it and not hit anybody. There was just nobody there.
Yeah.
And I went to the Mega Camp, and it's this absolutely, live energy, a lot of professionals going around, everybody fully engaged. And then I saw people crying at the microphone, talking about how the systems and models that they had adopted, taught by Keller Williams, had changed not only their life, but the life of their family and the lives around them in their community. And I was just like, that's it. That's it. That's what I'm looking for. That's, I'm not very smart, but my instincts are good. And I knew that was it. That's what we were looking for.
That's awesome. So both of us have had the pleasure of working for you. I obviously have been your favorite employee ever.
Ever. Don't tell Aaron.
Didn't even balk
Exactly.
A little bit. What are some of I could go all day long about the business life principles you've taught me. What are some of one or two of the top business lessons, or even leadership lessons that you've learned over the years?
I hearken back to what my dad was one of my mentors in my life, one of the people who influenced me the most. And he used to have a saying, I'm sure you both have heard me say it. You can be right or you can be rich, but you usually can't be both.
Yep.
And it's taken me, in fact, I'm still sort of unpacking what that really means. But, fundamentally, it just means, set your ego aside, ask a lot of questions, seek out the best of whatever it is you're attempting to understand, study them, just always stay in curiosity, and always recognize that there are people that have come before you that have mastered these things, and you have a lot to learn from them. And of course, that's Gary Keller, right? Yeah. People say, well, Gary Keller invented this and Gary Keller invented that. And Gary would be the very first to tell you he didn't invent any of it. He researched the very best. He distilled it, and there's nobody better at distilling information. And then he created systems and models and education programs and technologies that support all those best practices. Going back to what my dad said, going back to your question, you can be right or you can be rich, but you usually can't be both. And that's sort of foundational for me.
I've heard you say that a million times, and I catch myself saying it at least once a week now.
Oh, really?
No, I say that all the time because I think it just resonates as, we look at it like with our agents and everybody else going, you can die on that hill pride-wise, or you can learn from somebody and stand on the shoulders of giants and succeed.
Yeah, they've already gone before you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well said.
Exactly.
Well said.
I got a question. The opportunity comes in many different forms, and how are you able to, I guess, I don't want to say capture opportunity or take opportunity when others can't see it, or whenever it arises or kind of comes in front of you? Or do you have like an ability to go, hey, that's an opportunity, I'm jumping on it? Or explain that if you don't mind.
Like how do you filter out the noise?
Yeah, I mean, because I'm sure opportunity comes across daily or even weekly or monthly or whatever, but how do you determine that it's an opportunity to begin with? How about that?
Really good question. And forgive me if I answer a question with a question, but just to make sure I understand, how would you define opportunity?
And like I say, it comes in many different forms, but I would say, coming into business with somebody.
For example, I'm sure there is 1,000 restaurants in Austin that would love an investment. Why that one?
Yeah. What are the signs? What are the things that you identify with?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. That's
working with the investment company you're working with now. Like what are some of your determining factors on saying yes?
Yeah. Super good question. Thank you for that clarification. So I think that it starts with, I think the hardest question of all, and that's understanding what you want. What's your mission? What's your personal mission? What's your personal vision? What are your goals? And that's something that honestly, I did not do early enough in my life, have real clarity around those things. But once there's a mission, vision, values established personally, then it makes the filter, that becomes the lens through which you see the world. And so it makes the opportunities easier to sort through. And again, being sort of the senior statesman in the room, for me, it's always about who. It's let's put it this way: it's become who. I can't tell you how many no-brainer, absolute slam dunks I've invested in that are disastrous. Lost all my money, completely misjudged the situation. And I mean, going back now 30 years, I have missed like 9 out of 10 times in every one of those opportunities. And the common denominator in those is I really didn't have any other reason to do them other than I was trying to make a quick buck. That's it. I had no real screening criteria whatsoever. You know, one of the reasons why, good example, Chase, one of the reasons why I got involved in this restaurant in Austin was simply because my goal is to get in and networked with high quality people. And that opportunity brought two things. One is it was a group that had a track record and a trajectory that was very bankable. In other words, I knew that whatever I invested it in was not going to perform per the pro formas. No business does. However, they were the right team to make the adjustments necessary. They had the track record, they had the reputation that they were going to do the right thing by their investors, by their employees, by their customers. And so it was sort of an easy decision, right? In that respect, from strictly a standpoint of investing. And then, of course, they also networked me with about 100 different people here in Austin that are also investors, successful people with businesses of their own. And at that time, one of my goals was to get networked in Austin. And so it was sort of a twofer for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that is.
that's pretty.
Two questions together is, I know you talked about your father being one of your mentors. Who else speaks into your life, and what are some books that you look back and go, those were instrumental?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned Carl Pohlad, who I had the pleasure of working with for a period of time. Still very much informs my thinking. And again, Carl was it's always who. It's always who. And he used to have this saying that it was, you can take a fantastic leader and operator, and he will take a terrible business and make money out of it. And the converse is true. You can take a terrible leader and business person, and he'll take a no-brainer and lose it. And so for him, it was always a who conversation. And he didn't have any fancy assessments or anything. He just would call people in and just sort of stare at them for about an hour.
You got the sniff test.
Yeah, he could size people up. And then after you pass that test, you thought you were giving him a business pitch. I can't tell you how many people I paraded into his conference room that, they thought they were giving him a business pitch, and he wasn't listening to really a word of the business. He was just sizing them up as people.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so insofar as books, I'm sorry if I lost track of,
no, you're good.
Of all the questions. So far as books, a book that's not in print anymore, it's called The Man Who Wrestled with God, it would sort of be the most profound book that I ever read. It was a book that, Chase, you might be familiar with it. It was written by a minister, but that was literally a catalyst book in my transformation from thinking like a boy to thinking like a man. That didn't happen until my late 20s. On the business side, might be a surprising selection. It's called The Checklist Manifesto. I think I might have been.
You turned me onto that book, and I read it.
That's awesome.
The simplicity of a checklist, right?
Yeah, this is Mr. Checklist.
That's right.
Well, I think it was Aaron who really taught me. When he was talking about nuclear ordnance, and using checklists, I developed a whole new appreciation for their importance.
Yeah, absolutely. One question I got for you is, and I pick your brain about this a lot. Business stuff is cool. Money is cool. Being a great husband and a great dad is top of the list. What advice would you give parents of younger kids? How long you and Paul have been married for?
We've been married for 27 years.
And you've got 3 boys, all within a couple years of each other. Uh,
24, 22, and 19.
What advice? I mean, having 3 boys, I'm sure there's zero excitement there, and everything is planned out and even keeled all the time. What is some of the best parenting advice you could give to somebody?
Without a doubt, the most important question you guys have asked me today, and I'm humbled by the question. And like most parents, I wish I could rewrite a lot of my parenting history. You know, if I was sitting talking to my son right now, I'd say, always, always, always be patient and kind. Um, all the pressures and everything that I would bring home. I think I let those creep into my family life too much, and of course, your kids are completely innocent and they have nothing to do with any of that nonsense, and so leave it at the door.
Yep.
Always come from a place of curiosity. Always ask your kids lots of questions and shut up and listen. That I have found I've learned way more from my kids than I've ever been able to teach them. Took me too long to figure that out, though. Channel your energy into cultivating their strengths, and instead of focusing on shoring up their weaknesses. I think there's an expression that says, what you focus on
expands.
There you go. And so, focus on the positive, and, don't focus on what you perceive to be, weaknesses. And I guess the other thing is that they are who they are. They're born sort of who they are. And again, as my dad used to say, just don't mess them up.
Gotcha. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, I don't know why it was such a surprise, but my kids are just so different, so incredibly different from one another. And what a pleasant surprise that has turned out to be.
Yep. One of the things I appreciate the most is how many times you've ended a call with me because one of your boys or Paula was calling. And it just, I think a lot of people would get annoyed with that. I've picked that up in my own life going, I love the fact that we could have a important business conversation about I was on staff Keller Williams, and it was, oh, hold on, let me call you back. One of the boys is calling. One of the coolest habits I think I picked up from you is going, there's really not a conversation that takes precedent over one of those conversations. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Very kind of you to say. Thank you.
So what else you got?
What excites you in life right now?
Of course, I'm doing something completely new here in Austin. But I tell you what excites me the most are the people that I have the opportunity to be in relationship with. Aaron Wilson, Chase Delperdang, Kristen Cole, David Jones, Pete Peterson, Ben Reilly, David Wieland here. I mean, I have I've kind of become a people person in my old age. I just really just
don't say old age, because I'm just a few ticks behind you.
I've just have this such profound appreciation and gratitude for people that I've been blessed to have around me and support me, and I have sometimes the opportunity to support them, and it's just that's what rolls me out of bed in the morning.
Which is not that you've not been a people person, but I can distinctly remember we were at family reunion in Las Vegas a couple years ago, and we went to the Movement Mortgage Party. And I hate loud music and I hate crowds. And Anthony and I go together, and he's introducing me to some people. And I was going to go upstairs. He was staying downstairs, and he looks at me with this stare and says, "Do not leave without taking." And And I go, dude, I'm leaving I'm in bed by 8:30. He's like, perfect.
Nothing good happened.
And then like an hour later, I see him outside of across a bunch of people, and I look at him and I give him he's like, all right. I was in bed watching Law and Order by 8:30.
I remember it well. I
But
remember it well.
that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really cool seeing how focus differs within different seasons of life. It's definitely fun.
Well, again, it's always talking to a veteran here in Aaron. Who's in your foxhole matters. It really matters.
It does.
You don't really appreciate it when times are good, and I think it was the sort of the last business cycle we went through. But man, when times get tough, which they will, it's axiomatic. It will always happen. That's when it really matters. I had Sue Carton as my business partner in the darkest days, and I thank God I had her, because
she is the person you want in your foxhole.
Absolutely. And she made me a better person. She made me a better business person. Again, you guys, again, that stuff just matters more than anything to me right now. No, just nothing matters more than that.
One of the biggest lessons I learned from you prior to after getting in business with you, and not even business, relationship with you, was how much intentional relationships matter. And it's usually not that immediate relationship. It's like the 4 or 5 that you can track to it afterwards. Like an example is we have today, in an hour from now, we'll have a coaching call with Kristen Cole. She is an integral part of our weekly conversation now. And just looking at the relationships that we've had because of her now. And it's definitely focused on who you spend time with. And so thank you for that.
Yep, that's huge. I've learned a very valuable lesson off of that.
Absolutely.
I always go back to what you're talking about. Who would fall on the sword for you?
Yeah.
That analogy. And I think if you just pay attention to that and, thank them for it occasionally.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Well, we truly appreciate your time, and know you got to get to the restaurant.
So we got a couple months before we go down there to that restaurant.
We do. But
I'm super excited about the opportunity to see you guys.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thank you.
We appreciate your time tremendously.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
All right. Have a good day now.
All right.
Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.